I'm Carrie from Israel. I'm born of German Jewish parents, and my father was a well-known public figure representing World Orthodox Jewry. And I very early discovered that though I had been always going with him to the temple 3 times a day, fervently praying with him, that I could not entirely be satisfied in going the way of my father's so-called religion. And very early I started to occupy myself with the Western philosophers, and soon discovered that the Far Eastern teachings were by far more profound and satisfactory. So secretly studying the Far Eastern teachings of the Hindu religion, Vedanta, Veda, and Upanishads, and getting into contact with some Persian teachings, I one day left the house in the hope of coming to India, wanting to live the life of yoga, of a yogi, not only theoretically participating in it. So my way led me towards Egypt. I lived there in great spiritual isolation among the Arabs, and nobody heard of me, but I was looking for the master unconsciously, though I thought I was only interested in the eternal truth, without personal contact with the master. But I did not succeed then in meeting the master. I returned again after 8 years of stay in Egypt, in utter spiritual isolation, to Israel, and married there, but always keeping on the search, and came into contact with Lao Tzu, the Chinese sage who lived about 4,000 years ago. I was very much impressed by his teachings, and then came across Christian Science. I came across Zen Buddhism, and I knew about the teachings that every living creature has one day to meet his master on the Earth planet. I had met him in books, but not in persons, and I often wondered about it. In spite of my continuous endeavors and longing to live the life of a yogi in India, I did not succeed then. But one day, through a strange incident, my husband won a lottery which was imposed on him by the government. And because we never had any money, and he hadn't seen his parents in the States for 25 years, because he came to Israel directly whilst they went to the States. So he wanted to use that money for coming to the States to see his family, and I stated that I would want to come in order to meet my master from Persia, India, without actually knowing what it was all about. So we left together, and as soon as I was free, I had been treating some sick people there. I contacted some yoga and yogi societies. I sat with the Zen Buddhists in meditations. I was going home by subway at night, whilst my husband was asleep at home, wondering what it was leading me to. Then, one day, I heard by an acquaintance that a master from India was coming for 4 days to New York. And among the 10 million city of New York people, I was the only Israeli who was led into the living presence of our beloved Master, who forever now has consciously brought me into his eternal contact. The first moment, as I had reported before, at another occasion, when I came into the living presence of Baba and you, I had found my master, the master of life. And later on, they asked Baba, how is it that during those 4 days of your being in the States, in New York, and Carrie having just arrived for the first time in her life in the States, that she was brought into your presence among the mass of Americans. So Baba answered through Mani, his sister, the ways of the masters are wonderful. If he sees a soul being ready to be contacted, he has all the means at his disposal to bring this soul towards him. So at that very moment when Baba had arrived in New York, Carrie from Israel had left Jerusalem to meet him, whilst my husband was not ready to wait and had to return and wanted to return to Israel. I had heard of Baba's coming about 2.5 months before, immediately contacting the source of his writings, finding the Winterfelds, deciding on the discourses first, taking a little room somewhere, retiring entirely from the outside world. I experienced the discourses, being utterly shocked by its perfection and beauty. Day and night preparing myself for that only divine meeting. Introducing. So actually, when I had the grace of having come into the living contact of the Master, which I had never dreamed in my keenest dreams, there had not been a moment of separation ever since. Up to this very moment, I had, as Baba told me later, entered his innermost heart. And he had entered my innermost heart. And there was nothing else to it but to keep it up. I remember when I sat before Baba for the first time at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, the only Israeli, I decided to be just like a child, forgetting everything else I'd ever learned, endeavoring to make my mind blank and my heart empty, and so Baba could work in it. Now, in addition, an extraordinary thing happened. There was my sister who had been sick in a mental hospital, and they had shut her in a few days before because she was so noisy, and I had wanted to bring her out, to bring her before Baba, but they wouldn't let her. The very day I had had an appointment with Baba for her and for myself, I had a telephone call. I was allowed to take her out before Baba. Well, her husband, who is also very orthodox, came along but didn't come in. But my sister did, and we brought her before Baba, and he patted her on her shoulder and he looked at me and he said, she'll be all right. And I believe the next day they sent her home after she had been there for quite a long time. But she unfortunately never recognized Baba, And she made a point of telling me at every opportunity that she would never recognize Baba, as did none of my nearest so-called family in physics. But Baba had told me at the time when I had told you at the film audition that I should go straight back to Israel, and that Baba's apostle at the time of Christ were being stoned. Baba had told me, Carrie, no matter what I will do to you, I shall stand by you at any time. And he repeated it, no matter what I shall do to you, I shall stand by you. Now, then the extraordinary thing happened. You see, I had known I was going to remain without my husband in the state, and I wasn't allowed to work. I had no money anymore, and I had waited already 2.5 months for Baba, just a bit of money having been left. And I was terrifically sad. I thought my heart was breaking. They were all now going on to Myrtle Beach. They knew that, prepared themselves, financially and otherwise, for going with Baba. But I was supposed now to remain behind after having met at last my master. So standing in great sadness among the people who were preparing themselves to go with Baba, suddenly somebody pats me on my shoulder. It was a lady of the airport telling me that I had been invited by Baba to come along in his own plane to Myrtle Beach. Baba had been contacting some American Baba lovers, telling them to see to it that Carrie was coming along to Myrtle Beach. Then when I told my sister that I could not attend to her now at home, she was making an extreme fuss. But it didn't matter. I explained to her that I had to go. And so I flew with Baba on my first flight on this Earth plane and came with him to Myrtle Beach, where I had explained what extraordinary things had been happening, that the top of the trees and the frogs in the water and anywhere and everywhere they were calling out Baba, Baba. And whenever I had a wish, the slightest wish was fulfilled to me. I had a wish to see one of the Mandali. There he stood in front of me. I sought to speak to Kitty. There she was. All I needed was to think of Baba. So other things I recorded already on the other recorder. But I wanted to report something which is also very interesting. When Baba led us through the woods towards the sea, I was always running as close as possible behind Baba as far as Harry Kenmon would let me, and suddenly found myself down the sea alone, walking directly in the footsteps of my newly found master on this planet. It was extraordinary, symbolic, actually walking in his footsteps. Then Baba told us to look for the most beautiful shells at the beach to bring home to Mera. But I was so shocked and was only thinking of Baba and was still trying to find, and found some very strange shells, 2 shells. But I couldn't wait any longer, and I ran to Baba and showed him the shells. And Baba looked at it and said, through, I think it was one of the American disciples, very interesting, very original. So I simply sat down next to Baba, and there was an American disciple also sitting with Baba, and was very surprised how naturally I sat down next to my father. And then I felt, after all my wandering on this earth planet, the first day of my birth, because we had been suffering a lot at home through many conditions with those 9 sisters and brother, and the mother not having the strength to influence, and my father being a public man, finding, nevertheless, realizing even as a little girl that there must be reincarnation, never doubting it, and so understanding the ancient saying that every living creature must meet once in his lifetime his master. But having been always isolated in the West, in my extraordinary Oriental nature, there was another fact, that in all my prayers, in my postures, in my dancing, I was absolutely Oriental, particularly Indian. I'd never seen Indian dancing, and I danced them all on my own, and decided never to dance except my master allowing me to dance before him, even it should be at the moment when I was dropping my body. Now, the extraordinary things happened. I will mention again that Baba did fulfill the desire of mine in '69, when he suddenly made me dance. First in Pune, without my having known about it. Ramakrishnan later wrote to me, "Carrie, you didn't even know that you were dancing." Then later on, Mani and Mera desiring for me to dance was more for Baba before them. So I naturally combined it with song, dance and speech, all creative, newly created. Through the grace of Baba, there hasn't been a moment, and there isn't a moment of breath of interruption, of inner contact with Baba. No matter whether Baba dropped his earthly frame, there Baba works in our hearts, day and night. And so it will be at the end of the days, creating an indestructible bond between all creatures on different levels of evolution, and particularly, of course, among our human sisters and brothers. When Baba had told me, after I had been with him in Myrtle Beach, of which happenings I had been telling at another occasion, Baba said to me, "Go straight back to Israel and there spread my message of love." Since I had recognized him as my master, there was no questioning of fulfilling his very wish. Though I had only just arrived for a short time ago in the States, I packed my things and off I went, knowing that Baba was sending me into worse than a desert island regarding Israel, where there was intellectualism and nationalism and Zionism. But it was Baba with me, and ever since. Now, regarding happenings with Baba, whilst I was with him, there were continual things happening in inner contact. Baba always said, "I do not know about it, it's your own capacity of receiving